All right. Hello, I'm Millie Weaver, and you're watching the Millennial Millie Show. All right. So today we're going to be doing an interesting broadcast where we're going to be analyzing the Democrats, what they're up to recently, and I'm going to be giving you my analysis as to why I believe that the Democrats are actually a lot weaker than they seem. I think right now, because we have the Biden administration in the White House, we have the Democrat House, which is putting on this clown show January 6th hearing. It gives the appearance that the Democrats are in the utmost position of power and control and that they are just gonna wipe the Republicans off the face of the planet and wipe their opposition out. And I think that that's actually far from true. I think that why we're seeing such, you know, boisterous and risky behavior really from the Democrats is because they are actually scared and they are actually in a very desperate situation, and that is why they're attacking so hard. So let's get right into it with these news articles. First of all, gun ownership amongst Black Americans is continuing to surge, and it really started to surge during the beginning of the COVID-19 pandemic. What does this mean? When we're seeing large amounts of African Americans in our country becoming gun owners and taking guns into their homes, when you see the Democrats now having such, really coming forward with this anti-gun agenda and push for gun control, where they want to take away AR-15s, they want to take away certain weapons that have larger magazines and whatnot. Really, they want to take away all of our guns, but they say it's just some guns until they can finally work up to all the guns. But what does this mean? How are they going to vote in the elections when you're seeing so many African Americans buying guns in a large surge? People are seeing the importance of being able to protect yourself. And I think that this whole agenda that they tried to use to take away guns in the name of the Uvalde, Texas shooting has really backfired on them, because the police not doing their job to the point where you actually had mothers jumping over the fence to go and rescue their children, when you literally had armed officers standing outside the school not going in and doing anything. It actually illustrated why we do need guns in this country and why we should be arming teachers. We should be arming security and staff. We should actually be able to not have these gun-free zones that make us into sitting ducks, essentially. That people who want to come in and commit crimes of, horrible carnage just see those gun-free zone signs and they're like, ooh, yay, bunch of sitting ducks. I guess I'm going to just go in here and enact my revenge. And here's my manifesto, by the way, so I can go viral on social media and all across the news, the mainstream media. It's becoming a pattern where we're seeing all these copycat criminals that just go shooting up places. This is more the time than ever to say, you know what, we need guns. We need to be able to take our right to self-defense into our own hands. And maybe the liberal media pushing so hard with a false narrative, really, that there's white supremacist gun problem in this country, and there's all these white supremacist far-right Nazis lying in wait ready to pop out and shoot people of color in this country, which is not true, but it's the narrative that they're trying to perpetuate. Maybe that has actually backfired, because now we're seeing more African Americans, people of color, actually becoming responsible gun owners and realizing the importance of having a gun in their home. So now when the Democrats are trying to take away our guns, it's starting to backfire. We also have been seeing the Democrats recently in the news media. There's this tension amongst each other where they're literally like attacking each other, because some of the Democrats are willing to admit and kind of, there's an asterisk by that, willing to admit, but they're kind of like, hey, Biden's really old and we don't know, how well he'll do in 2024. And so let's kind of talk about not having Biden in 2024. And the other half of the Democrats are insulted by this. They're upset at this. How dare you question Joe Biden? How dare you? I mean, the guy, by the end of a second term, if we did have Biden, he would be approaching 90. I don't even want to see Joe Biden approaching 90. I mean, my goodness, that man, if he's in office for a second term, we're all in trouble. We will just be dealing with just a lot of problems. Let's just say that. So let's go a little bit to some of this clips so you can kind of get the picture here on this infighting that's going on amongst the Democrats right now, which really illustrates weakness.
This is Don Lemon speaking to the press secretary, Karine Jean-Pierre.
Does the president have the stamina, physically and mentally, do you think, to continue on even after 2024?
Don, you're asking me this question. Oh my gosh, he's the president of the United States. You know, I can't even keep up with him. We just got back from New Mexico. We just got back from California. That is not a question that we should be even asking.
Okay. As David Axelrod says, and he's come out and put his name on it, he said, look, this is a person who, if they win, will be closer to 90 at the end of their second term than 80. And therefore, these are very fair questions. Joe Biden said these were fair questions the last time when he was running. So do you have these questions?
Well, I think everybody is looking very closely now. When Biden does well, he does really well. That gun speech he gave, he was perfect. It was powerful.
Oh, yeah. Joe Biden does so well at his speeches. I mean, and the aliens and the, conspiracies and the na-na-na. I mean, the guy rambles on, all right, over and over and over again, rambles on incoherently. No one knows what the heck he's saying. I mean, some of my family members that literally don't even pay attention to politics, I've shown them the videos of Biden and how he just slurs his speech and he mumbles and jumbles and he can't get a coherent thought out. And they're just like, wow, this is actually really scary. This is the person that's supposed to be running the country right now. Well, if it weren't true, right? If it weren't true and it were just like deep fakes or something where, Joe Biden's this great orator, he can speak wonderfully. That's just all, internet fake news. If that weren't the case, then why is our country suffering so much right now economically? I mean, everything's falling apart with Joe Biden as president. And some of the Democrats are unwilling to acknowledge, like, hey, we might have messed up big time, And I have seen some Democrats, not like political pundits or politicians, but just regular people who voted for Joe Biden, which we all know is probably not many people who actually voted for Joe Biden, but they came forward on TikTok and were like, I'm willing to admit that I messed up. I'm sorry. So it's been kind of refreshing seeing that. But even with the gas prices through the roof, the inflation like record high to where now the Fed is actually having to increase their rates. It's looking bad, and we're not seeing many Democrats willing to admit it, and some are, and so now that's the problem, why we're seeing this infighting. Here's a clip. Oh, here we go. Here's a clip where you have the hosts of The View, Joy Reid and Whoopi Goldberg, these ladies with all these views that are really not very smart. They go on and they publicly reprimand David Axelrod and tell him he should keep his mouth shut for talking about Joe Biden's age. Like, how dare you talk about Joe Biden's age? I mean, how many videos have we seen of Joe Biden literally aimlessly wandering around on the White House lawn, not even knowing where he's at or where he's going, speaking incoherently, not knowing he's in interviews, not knowing when he's supposed to talk or not, turning around, shaking the Easter Bunny or hand, or the Easter Bunny having to tell him where to go, turning around and shaking invisible people's hands. I mean, Joe Biden is an utter mess. And if anyone in the Democrat side of things speaks about it, this is what they get. They get unleashed on by all these pundits.
You're being ageist, and I'm going to say it.
Yeah.
Ronald Reagan.
Ronald Reagan had
Alzheimer's.
Right.
As a younger man, he was much younger than 80, and I don't think that's what's going to make it happen. It's not your enemy; it's what you can get done.
Can I add one?
Say it really fast.
David Axelrod should keep his mouth shut. And you know what? Ronald Reagan's rule was, "Thou shalt not speak ill of a fellow Republican." And I say unto you, David Axelrod, do not speak ill of a fellow Democrat.
There we go.
Yeah.
Thou shalt not speak ill of a fellow Democrat. So that's the rule, I guess, that they're abiding by. Don't acknowledge when there's a massive hole in your boat, or don't acknowledge when the whole thing is crumbling and you guys all made a huge mistake. Just go with it. That's their motto, right? It's clearly getting bad. But this is what David Axelrod really even said. That Biden's age would basically be a really big issue if he decides to run again. He's a former Obama advisor, so, it's coming from someone of somewhat of authority in the Democrat world. The presidency is a monstrously taxing job, and the stark reality is the president would be closer to 90 than 80 at the end of his second term. He looks his age and isn't as agile in front of camera as he once was, and this has fed a narrative about competence that isn't rooted in reality. Yeah, I think that's where he got it wrong. Clearly, it's very rooted in reality, okay? Clearly, Biden has a competence problem, and he requires the entire mainstream media industrial complex, the whole staff of Democrat administrators he has, the entire Democrat Party and really the entire entertainment industry has to make up for Joe Biden's incompetence and his inadequacies. And really and truly, what is up with this trend, though, of having people who are like borderline dementia in office as our politicians? I'm sorry, but like Nancy Pelosi even. This lady, she's like one of those rattling little Chihuahua dogs half the time when she's speaking, and she sounds like she's drunk. She heavily slurs her speech, and it's just like, why? Like, get these people to the old person home. Let's get some real patriots in there. Let's get some people that are not career politicians that have been in office for decades and haven't done a damn thing for the people. Let's get some people, some real people that actually represent us. Who said our representatives have to be a bunch of lawyers or career politicians? Our representatives are supposed to represent us. They're supposed to be people that we can relate to, or that can at least relate to us. People that understand our wants and our needs and, the things that we care about in this country, our values. You think these hobnobby, high society people that, drink their wine and champagne all day understand the blue-collar American workers in this country? No, they don't. These are just, it's ridiculous. And so Joe Biden clearly has elder problems, okay, dementia problems. And look, I've had some people in my family with not dementia, but Alzheimer's, and it's a horrible thing. And that's why I think to some degree it's actually a form of elder abuse that they're using him as a puppet, really, in this way. It's like, recognize when you actually would need to use the 25th Amendment, right? So then here's the other thing. You also have them talking about, well, we need to look toward candidates like Kamala Harris or Elizabeth Warren or Pete Buttigieg. Like, those would be their other contenders and whatnot. Honestly, I don't really see how any of it really matters, because there's no way in hell that Joe Biden did as good as he did in the 2020 election. There's no way you're going to convince me that Joe Biden got over 80 million votes. I'm sorry, but you're not. You're not going to convince me of that. It's just not possible. The man could not fill up a tiny little building in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. I'm sorry. In that same city, Trump could fill up entire arenas. So you're not going to convince me of it. It's not happening. So now we've got Elon Musk, who really kind of represents more of the moderate left that is slightly, I wouldn't say that they're moving center. I would say that the far left is moving so far left that it's actually pulling the entire compendium with them. And they're just like, now all of a sudden they're finding themselves to be centrists, when in reality they're just, they're left, but they're not communist, socialist left, ultra progressive left. So Elon Musk represents what regular left-leaning people are, in some way thinking, and he influences them a lot on Twitter and social media. Recently, though, some of them have started to accuse him of being far right or right wing. Like, how dare you, Elon Musk, decide to start supporting some right wing ideologies and some right wing candidates? Elon Musk recently came out on Twitter saying that he would vote for Ron DeSantis in the primary, and that recently, for the first time, he has voted Republican. So what does that mean? Is he going to be influencing more left-wing people to jump across the aisle and get away from the far-left extreme DNC and Democrat Party that we see today? It could very well be. And this might be part of the reason why the Democrats are panicking, okay? They are losing it. They are not doing as well as they had hoped. And in these recent primaries, they definitely didn't do as well as they had hoped. They saw a lot of candidates that were endorsed by Trump. They did well again. And to them, that's not a good sign. Really and truly, it's not a good sign. So let's talk about the primaries. So 4 states held primary elections yesterday, and we saw some races where people that were endorsed by President Trump came out well. Tom Rice, pictured here, he was the Never Trumper sellout that essentially wanted to vote to impeach Donald Trump. He wanted to vote to send the slates of electors, or not send the slates of electors back. Essentially, he's a rhino sellout, and he lost to Russell Fry. So it was Russell, let me see. Yeah, Russell Fry won of more than 51%. Right? So it says, biggest news of the evening so far is that Russell Fry beat impeach master Tom Rice with a vote of more than 51%, winning outright. This is pretty big because it's showing that the sellout Republican rhinos that decided to really abandon their own oaths of office and protecting the rights of the American people and ensuring that we're all having free and fair elections, it really it means that they are now reaping what they sowed. They're going to lie in the bed that they made, and their constituents are not happy, and they're voting them out. So that's what that represents. Although we did see in one race with Republican Nancy Mace, who had a challenger of Kate Arrington. Kate Arrington, she wasn't likely to win. She really was up against a lot of odds here in this area, and she didn't really have much support or financial backing, and so she did lose, unfortunately, to Nancy Mace. And Nancy Mace is not pro-Trump. She was one of the people who wasn't for getting to the bottom of what happened in the 2020 election. She wanted to just, make sure that Biden was inaugurated, essentially. So she wasn't the best. And also, she voted to certify the 2020 election results and to hold Trump ally Steve Bannon in contempt of Congress. So she's not really a good character here. But for the most part, we saw the Republicans do well and the Trump-backed candidates do well overall. And that's why you do see Democrats really not happy right now about the way things have been going. And we know they've been trying desperately to get everyone's attention off of the economy, inflation, food shortages, high gas prices, which is really hard to do when that affects everyday Americans. People who don't even tune into politics are being affected by those things. So the automatic knee-jerk reaction and response for most Americans is to just blame the president and the current administration. And really and truly, I would say that in this instance, you absolutely can blame Biden and his failing policies of his administration for a lot of the problems that we're seeing. So they're trying to get everyone's attention off of that, flip the narrative around onto January 6th to try to hurt Trump and make it so Trump can't run in 2024, and also to try to take out the to take out their Republican opponents that they're wanting to try to beat out in the midterms. You know, from what I've heard from insiders, it's that the Republicans are really going for the House during the midterms, and the Senate are really pushing for, the Dems are really pushing for the Senate. So what does that mean? I mean, I think that there could be some problems here, all right? So I've kind of proposed this idea that what if the Democrats were like, okay, sure, yeah, you know, there's this wheeling and dealing between the Republican and Democrat establishment about who's going to take the House, who's going to take the Senate. And things could go really bad if, like, right before the election, we start to see the Democrats in the House pass a bunch of bills that they know they would never get through a Republican-dominated Senate, and then to catch them on the other side and essentially, once they become Senate, get them through. Now, I'm not sure entirely how all that could possibly happen, but, I mean, it is odd to me that you'd be seeing the Republicans go for the House and the Democrats going for the Senate so hard. You know, you'd think it would be more, you know, spaced out broadly across the board. All right, so we're going to go into January 6th a little bit later. But let's touch on this other candidate. So there was a girl named Mayra Flores. She's a Republican from Texas that won in a special election that Democrats almost always win. So this actually represents, I'm going to show you this clip here. This actually represents that, you know, the Republicans are making a comeback, and we might, in fact, see a red wave here. So this is what the Democrats are panicking about, because, look, if they can't predict these things and people who typically vote Democrat all of a sudden start switching for Republican last minute, this actually could really mess up their ability, I think, to do any type of rigging or election fraud. So let's
could really be changing significantly for the midterms. So this could be a canary in the coal mine for Democrats and the Hispanic vote in a lot of these states. She becomes Congresswoman, again, the first ever Mexican-born, the first ever Latina Republican Congresswoman from the state of Texas. We'll go over the other races after you bounce around, but this is a big one, Shannon.
It is, and as we've seen in recent polling numbers, a number of Hispanic voters pulling away from Democrats and going over and giving the Republicans a try. And as you said, in that district, that's very interesting. Okay, it's a big one tonight. We'll come back to you for a couple more biggies that are going on. Thank you, Brett.
Okay, so as you can see, we seem to be seeing that the Republicans are making somewhat of a comeback. The Democrats are scared about this. They're not happy about it. And I think this is large in part because of people exposing, largely online social media, the ludicrousness of the left, people seeing the failed policies of the left, seeing these weird drag queen stuff that's been going on. This is really influencing people. It's influencing people in the Hispanic community who tend to actually be a little bit more conservative traditionally, culturally. And so maybe they're not going for the Democrats and their want to have third trimester up until birth abortions and wanting to think it's okay to indoctrinate children with, you know, gender studies and all that other crazy stuff they want to do. And it could be affecting people economically to a point where they're like, you know what, I don't care about all these other, you know, Democrat liberal ideologies, because at the end of the day, my kids need to eat and I need to be able to afford gas for my vehicle. So when you start to get to the nuts and bolts of things and realize, hey, it's all great to want to talk about mean tweets with Trump and say, okay, yeah, we want to get this guy out of here because of mean tweets. But then when they actually realize, when they have Biden in there, that the Democrat policies are so bad for our economy that it's actually affecting their ability to feed their kids, put gas in their vehicles, that's when people go, okay, well, you know what? I'll take the mean tweets over this other craziness that's going on. All right, so let's talk a little bit about one more story, which I'm not so sure if I can talk about this story on YouTube per se, but I'll try to delicately talk about it. But then I will be ending the stream on YouTube and going over back onto my website where I can talk more in depth for the last portion of the show today. So you guys, millennialmillie.com, you can watch me on there and I can speak more freely on there. As long as you're watching me from 5 p.m. Eastern time, you can watch for free. So just go there 5 p.m. Eastern time. The live stream's up on the front page of millennialmillie.com. Monday, Wednesday, Friday, you can watch me. And if you're watching me now on these platforms, know that there's even more content, more days that you're missing out on, because I'm not streaming every single one of the days of my show on these other platforms like YouTube and Facebook, because they like to moderate content way too much. And there's certain topics that really need to be gone into in depth. And I need to be able to speak freely to do that. So take that into consideration. Remember to go to millennialmillie.com for my more in-depth content. Now, recently, there was a controversy where there was another drag queen story time or story hour, and you actually had people go there and interrupt it because they had a drag queen up there reading stories to children. And apparently this drag queen has posted tons of content online that is vulgar, has stated really like kind of sexually explicit things in their videos and their content. And the real concern here is that, you know, why are you promoting these people who are role models for sexual debauchery, talking about sexualizing children and things? Why are you promoting those type of people to children in public libraries? And so a group of men went here into this library and started calling out the people, basically wanting to shut down the story hour. And I'll show you a clip from this interaction here.
About the pedophile.
It's not optional.
We want to know.
You're required.
We want to know.
wear a mask.
Oh, we're medically exempt. Thank you, though. Who brought the pedophile? I just want to know.
Story time is actually for children.
It's
and
for,
parents.
well, then why is the pedophile here?
So if you guys could please.
Why did you, no. We want to know why there's a pedophile here.
We saw videos of what
I'm
that
sorry,
thing
you're
does.
Yeah.
library
Why did you,
policy. I have to ask
hey,
It's got
you
videos
see a lot of
talking about what it
pedophiles
wants
in
to do
here.
to little children.
Yeah.
You are.
Why did
It
you
has
allow
videos
pedophiles?
on YouTube of what it wants to do to little children.
Why did you bring the pedophile?
I don't understand.
These are
I don't
just
understand.
children.
Yeah, then why would you bring your children to a pedophile?
We're not
Yeah,
swearing.
yeah.
It's not vulgar
Hey,
language.
you should be ashamed of yourself. You should be ashamed of yourself.
Why would you want to bring children to this? Why would you want to expose?
It is a good question though. Why? Like, why? What is this obsession with these like progressive liberals where they're like, I want to go expose my children to drag queens. Like, I'm so trendy. Like, yeah, I'm so tolerant that I'm going to expose my children to adult sex performers, basically. I mean, what are drag shows? Drag initially was like something that started up in clubs and bars and things for adults, for adult entertainment, very sexual, very raunchy, explicit, men dressed up as women, and the men representing women in a very I think it's actually a very offensive way that they represent women. I mean, I've seen some of these drag performers. I went and did some undercover work, and they've got like Muffy Fish Basket as a name, right? Or Macy Some Cocks or whatever. I mean, Muffy Fish Basket. Is that how you represent women? That's a respectful way to represent women. I mean, that would be like someone like, oh, I'm going to go dress up. I'm going to go dress up like as a Hispanic or Mexican, but in a very derogatory, disrespectful way. Or I'm going to go dress up black, but in a very derogatory, disrespectful way. And somehow that's all okay, right? That's all okay. Like literally people get canceled for wearing like, black paint on their face or things like that, right? They get canceled for that. But yet, which, to some extent, it's wrong to be making fun of people for race and things like that. But at the same time, they can sit there and, in a very derogatory, disrespectful way, say, I'm a woman, and represent what it is to be a woman in a very just raunchy, I'm a piece of meat, like just disgusting way. And that's what it is time and time again with these drag queens or whatever. And so we're going to expose that to children. We're going to go out of our way to take our children to a library to be exposed to drag queens? Really? And then when you look at the content that this drag queen has been posting online on social media, that's when you really get the point as to why these men went here and were like, no, we're shutting this down. I'm sorry. Like, you guys might not be protecting your kids, but we're going to protect the kids. Because the liberals seemed more concerned about protecting this drag queen than they were than protecting the children and protecting them from being overly sexualized or potentially exposed to things that they shouldn't be. So here's them actually showing these leftists the content that this drag queen posts online.
Now that there's no kids in here, watch this video.
Hey, thank you.
That's right there.
Yeah, you like that, don't you sick fuck?
That is not what's happening.
That's the thing that's made into these
it
kids.
Talks about children in this video. Glorifying drugs. What?
So you get the point here, and when I get off of YouTube and whatnot, I'll show you guys more of the video footage. I can't talk too much about this subject on this platform, YouTube, because it will get me banned. I probably already shared too much on there. So let's go into January 6th, and we'll go back to that subject more in depth later. The January 6th hearing and trial, one of the things that really has stood out in these January 6th hearings is that they keep trying to push this narrative that we didn't know there was going to be a threat. That's why we didn't have the National Guard there. That's why we didn't have more armed security or riot police, because we didn't know. And so that is easily disproven. And the more important thing, though, is they didn't actually need to have proof of a threat in order to have the National Guard there. In order to have more police there, fencing, barricades, they didn't need to have that. In fact, I was going through some of the old footage that I have, because I've went and covered so many of these different things, over time. And I remembered hearing and seeing this in the news media about the inauguration security efforts that were being put into place in 2016. Now, the 2016 election, right? So in 2017 is when they did the inauguration. Leading up to inauguration, they they made all these security efforts. And they really had the National Guard there, the fences there, everything. I mean, the security presence was so insane. A lot of people actually couldn't even get into the inauguration because they had to pass through security scanners, security checkpoints. Do you guys remember that? Those of you guys who went to Trump's inauguration, they had a ton of security presence there. And they didn't have to say there was a specific threat to have that, because they know that whenever there's a large group of people, there's always a possibility that there could be an attack. There could be a terrorist attack or a group of people that decide to take advantage of that. So it's always a good reason to have lots of security. Check this out here. Look at this article from ABC News. It says, while there are no specific or credible threats, almost every federal partner imaginable will be contributing to the security apparatus this weekend, including the FBI, ATF, Park Police, Customs and Border Protection, the Coast Guard, Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, and the Department of Energy. The United States Capitol Police Department is responsible for securing the Capitol, and the Metropolitan Police Department will be primarily protecting the parade route while still serving the entire city outside the inaugural activities. What is going on here? Okay, so what does that all mean? It means that this was not handled properly. What happened on January 6th happened because they wanted it to happen. It would not and could not have happened had they actually wanted it to not happen. That's what I'm trying to tell you right now. They left the door open. They left the security all open. They only had National Guard and police ready and on standby for the Metropolitan Police area, but the National Mall, the Capitol Police, all of that was left wide open, of course, where all the protesters, the marches were scheduled to be. There were several protest events scheduled for January 6th other than just President Trump's protest event. There was a protest event scheduled right in front of the Capitol steps that had nothing to do with President Trump, or it wasn't associated with him and his campaign. So tons of protests, tons of agitators and provocateurs, media, everything, right? Almost 1 million people are supposed to show up, but you're just going to not have any security? Not have the National Guard, not have any of that? When they had all of that there for the inauguration, they've had it for several other events in the past. Take a look at this video footage from 2016 during the DNC, the Democrat National Convention, where Bernie Sanders and his camp were really upset because they believed that there was voter fraud and that their votes were stolen from them in the primaries and wrongfully given to Hillary Clinton. Now, this is just the Democrat National Convention, but do you think they had no gates, no barriers, no police, none of that? Do you think they left the door wide open? No, they did not. So let's look at this video just so we can see, compare and contrast the security response to the protest. We will vote for Hillary! Hell no, DNC! We will vote for Hillary! Feel the burn! Feel the burn! Feel the burn! Feel the burn! DNC officials using racist sabotage to persuade his primary election! You don't call that voter fraud? Really? That is literally voter fraud! Fuck you! You're not gonna vote for your warmonger! So look at those big giant fences, those big black fences. They typically put those up outside of big events where they know big protests are going to be. DNC WikiLeaks! DNC WikiLeaks! notice in these video clips that I show you that the Democrats in this time period, the Bernie Democrats, were open about and very vocal about their beliefs that massive amounts of voter fraud took place, that it was stolen from Bernie Sanders, that they believed their votes were stolen from them. And so now this would be a good thing to remind these Democrats of when they act like, oh, you guys are all nuts and conspiracy theorists for saying you think that your vote was stolen from you. Oh, really? Well, what about this? What about when your votes were stolen from you in regards to Bernie Sanders? We know that the Democrat Party didn't want to give it to Bernie Sanders. They wanted to give it to their people they selected. And it happened to them twice. It happened with Hillary Clinton, and then it happened with Joe Biden. So they were vocal about it, right? And now they try to act like it was so insane and extremist for Trump supporters to have questioned what happened in 2020, right? So they can do it when it suits them, but if you do it, you're an extremist. You're a violent extremist that needs to be locked away in a cage, right? And notice how at the DNC, though, they had those big, giant black fences. Anytime there's like a big protest like this where they're expecting angry protesters or something where there's going to be a decision made that's very volatile or contentious, that is when they typically have police presence, fences, security, everything. And you'll just see just for the DNC, okay, how much they went out for security on. And yet they couldn't have that for our government building, our U.S. Capitol, with all of our representatives inside of it. Come on now. Come on now.
We are going to remain peaceful. Hell no, DNC. We will vote for Hillary. 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 Election fraud. Election fraud. Election fraud. Election fraud.
Look, they even have the ghetto bird helicopters out there. Look at all the police. They had all the police out. How would that have looked for the Democrats as far as optics and narrative control if a bunch of Bernie Sanders supporters stormed the DNC because they felt their vote was stolen from them? Do you think that would have helped them and helped the narrative that they were trying to push, that everyone loved Hillary and they wanted this female president, right? Would that have helped their narrative? No, it would not have. Definitely not. So in this case, they had gates, fences, tons of police, helicopters, security everywhere, which is very typical for these events. So what was very untypical, very odd, very out of the ordinary was the lack of security presence on January 6th around the National Mall. It was just unbelievable how low security there was. There could have been another like Boston bombing type situation or terrorist attack or any of that, and it could have just caused absolute chaos, stampedes, whatever, and it would have been a nightmare scenario. So they had no security there. It was crazy. And then just a couple of the regular Capitol Police that were there. That's ridiculous when there's supposed to be almost 1 million people showing up, and this is over who's going to be the next president of the United States in a very contested election. It's crazy. It's intentional negligence. Look at them on the fences, climbing over the fences. Your you're telling me that if they had left the door wide open and had little tiny corrals, that these people wouldn't all hopped over the tiny corrals and stormed the DNC? So I remember, because I was obviously there and we were filming this footage, but when the few people that were climbing over the very tall protester fences were going onto the other side, there was literally an entire row, just rows of police. And so they were just immediately being arrested and processed. So the security presence was just what you typically see. I wouldn't even say it was really immense, because this is what I've seen with the RNC. I've seen it with tons of other political events like this. Saw it with the inauguration in 2016. I mean, it's typical. This is just what you typically see when you're expecting large amounts of protesters for some kind of big convention or big ceremony. Where does this look familiar? Using the corrals as a ladder. We saw people doing that on January 6th, didn't we?
Breach the wall!
And of course, there was agitator Vermin Supreme with the boot on his head. No, did you notice that guy, though? He said, breach the wall, breach the wall. Isn't it funny how Democrats love walls when it suits them, right? They love to erect giant fences and walls when it suits their needs. And they love to not have walls when it also suits their needs. Like on January 6th, when they had no walls and left everything wide open for agitators and many people dressed in black bloc to break into the Capitol, right? But also how they leave our southern border wide open when it suits their needs, when they can get tons of illegal immigrants crossing the border and then try to use them to vote in their elections to ensure they keep their seats because they know that nobody wants them there because of their horrible policies. It's interesting how walls suit them when it suits them. And right after Biden became the president, what did he do? What was the first thing he did? Do you remember? He erected giant walls around the White House. Isn't that interesting? Isn't that interesting how it's just so convenient when it suits their needs?
The DNC has got to go! Hey, hey! Ho, ho! The DNC has got to go! Hey, hey! Ho, ho! The DNC has got to go! Hey, hey! Ho, ho! The DNC has got to go! Hey, hey! Ho, ho! The DNC has got to go! Hey, hey!
I just saw someone comment, they're like, I hope all the illegals that come here vote Republican. That's hilarious, first of all. And you know what? That's actually genius, whoever you are that just commented that in YouTube. If we can start convincing the illegals that, you know, cross into the country to vote Republican, we will then finally see the Democrats take a massive effort to close up the southern border. All of a sudden, they will love walls again. All of a sudden, they'll be building the wall and finding it themselves. They'll be like, you know what? We want the wall. We're going to build up the wall. You will see them 180 on that position so fast if we could just convince all these people, hey, why don't you just come here and vote Republican, right? even though it's totally illegal, but the Democrats do it, right? So, interesting point. So I remember this was a pretty crazy, rowdy protest, okay? You had people hopping over the barricades. There's other footage of people literally like jumping on top of vehicles, twerking on top of vehicles. It was pretty rowdy, okay? And so if they had had no fences and just minimal police there, it's almost guaranteed that those protesters would have stormed the DNC and would have disrupted it. And it would have been a big media thing, okay? But see, they would never let it get to that because they didn't want it to get to that for their narrative control. January 6th, they wanted it to go that way, okay? That's what they wanted. Here's also some video footage of me back in the day, and this is in 2016 during the RNC, where I'm showing you guys essentially the massive police state efforts that were put into place in Cleveland. They actually gave the city like tons and tons of money to revamp their entire security infrastructure ahead of time for the RNC to ensure they had proper security for that event because they knew that there were going to be protesters. So here's that clip. Stop your vehicle, you know, the things that stop your vehicles with the spikes if you try to go in when they don't want you to. I mean, they had a lot of security stuff going on for the RNC where President Trump, that's where he, you know, got the nomination, and there were people wanting to protest him, left-wing people. So they had tons of security presence there because they didn't want left-wing people to storm the convention because that would have not been good for their narrative.
Right here, this looks like the parade route in which people will be walking, parading, either protesting for Trump or against Trump. It goes all the way down through here, and it even actually comes up through here too, and they're going to be caged in. What's going to be crazy is that they actually have the pro-Trump marchers and the anti-Trump marchers going and marching along this exact same route, and from what I've heard, they are going to walk all the way down the parade route, and then they're going to be made to turn back around and march back. And this is sure to cause confrontation, and there's not really anywhere to run besides forward and back when you're caged in, and cops are going to be surrounding, so it's going to be a pretty intense event. There are rumors also of potential off-location FEMA detention centers for...
Okay, so clearly you can see in the video footage that they are erecting massive fences, those same black protest fences that you typically see at these big events, with the cement barricades, literally. I mean, they had the big old flatbed trucks bringing in all the fences, even the shorter corrals, which that I call them like the corral fences, and the cement blocks to literally cage the entire protest. They didn't want there to be a possibility of people breaking any windows or bothering the businesses. They built an entire fence, almost like a chicken run, for the protest march. This is the level of security that you see a lot of these cities. They go into a lot of effort to ensure that there's security when you see these big events with large amounts of protesters expected to come out. There were way less protesters that came out for the RNC and even for the DNC than were expected to come out for Trump's March to Save America on January 6th. Yet, there was considerably way less security presence on January 6th. In fact, way less than even the inauguration that happened in 2017 of President Trump. So you really have to ask yourself, was this negligence or was it by design? Either way, it doesn't go so well for the Democrats. Either way, they are in the wrong because we have to stay on that hot button issue. See, they want us to just glide right past it because even in their recent January 6th hearings, they said, oh, well, you know what we're not going to do? We're not going to blame the Capitol Police for not protecting the Capitol because some of them lost their lives that day. And, I'm just going to appeal to emotion so that you all just don't even go there and don't even touch that subject. That is the weak point. We need to press on that weak point. They're using the appeal to emotion to try to get us from pushing harder on that subject. Yes, there were some police officers, Capitol Police officers, that died that day. But is it the fault of Trump that they died? Or is it the fault of the Nancy Pelosi, the Democrat leader, who was the majority of the House, who was supposed to have instructed her sergeant of arms to have allowed his chief of police, the Capitol chief of police, to have had the National Guard there? The Capitol Police chief was continuously asking both the Sergeant at Arms for the House and the Sergeant of Arms for the Senate, which that would have been Mitch McConnell who had given that order, hey, are you guys gonna do what you're supposed to do and allow me to have the National Guard here? And they didn't. And there was a big issue. There was meetings about it. And sure enough, they had a meeting with the FBI, the Homeland Security, Secret Service, all these agencies, right, who made sure to have a big presence there for the 2017 inauguration. They had a big meeting with them, and they all said, there's no security risk because we have no recent intelligence of any security threat. Therefore, we're not going to recommend it. We're not going to have the National Guard. We're not going to have riot police. We're not going to have anything, really. Which is disgusting because they didn't need that justification for 2017, the inauguration of President Trump. They even admit it in the articles that there was no threat. There was none of that to justify it. They just had it because, when you have a large amount of people here, you want to make sure you have security. It's a smart thing to do. But in this case, they said no, even though I literally have email correspondence with the Secret Service, with the D.C. Metro Police, and with Department of Homeland Security, and even my source was sending stuff routinely to the FBI, tipping them off about what we had pertaining to left-wing radical groups talking about taking over government buildings and literally having detailed ArcGIS maps that highlighted and literally drew a big red square around the Capitol building like this is our target, where they're literally talking about there are going to be people there. They're going to take over these government buildings, smash in windows and take it over the building. And we should just let them. And we should just help them. And this is the level of plotting that we had captured in these Zoom calls. And they had listed their dates for their targeted events starting election night, which is why I had put a lot of this out right before election night, was to warn the authorities that they actually had planned to take over government buildings on election night. But because of the warnings, the police were actually able to go and shut down a lot of their protests, and they didn't let it happen, right? But they had hot points for January 6th, and they even had a hot point potentially for Inauguration Day. They had an entire timeline, okay? So I was even communicating with the authorities in December, okay, leading up toward January 6th. So the real thing here is this. There's no way in hell they can continue with that argument that there weren't any threats, that there wasn't a possibility that any extremist groups were planning to take over government buildings. There was tons of stuff out there on the internet, okay? Tons, all right? So that dog doesn't hunt. They left it open. because they wanted this to happen. They wanted this to happen. And still to this day, we don't know to what degree and what level the FBI's involvement was on January 6th. And in the hearings, the FBI doesn't want to give a lot of answers. They don't want to answer most of the questions that our Republican representatives have grilled them on pertaining to January 6th. We know that they're pointing the finger at the Proud Boys, they're pointing the finger at the Oath Keepers, but we also know that both the Oath Keepers and the Proud Boys have had problems with FBI infiltration. You saw what the FBI has done in the past with COINTELPRO, with the Black Panthers and some of these other groups. This is what they do. They target their enemy, their opposition, with the COINTELPRO ops. They get their FBI agents inside the groups. They then try to get some of the members of the organizations hung up and say, hey, we could charge you with this, that, and the other, but you become an informant for us and we won't charge you. That's how it works. And then what they do is soon enough, you have a bunch of FBI agents and informants in here, people who've been turned out by the FBI, and then they go and they do a big operation and they end up busting a couple of the people who weren't, made into informants. And that's exactly what happened with the Gretchen Wheeler case, the kidnapping plot against Gretchen Wheeler with the Oath Keepers. There were more FBI agents and informants in that whole plot than there really even were people who just didn't know that the FBI was running the whole show, right? And of course, the people who didn't know were actually doing some of the most minor things, like they had minor involvement in the whole thing, and the FBI agent, the FBI informants, they could actually have major roles in the whole thing, commit a bunch of crimes in the whole thing, and they don't get charged with anything. And that's how that goes. This is how they pick off like any type of grassroots type of organizations or groups that pop up. They run these COINTELPRO ops on them to take them out and to steer them and control them. So to what degree the FBI's involvement was on January 6th, we still have a lot of questions there. But there's been some groundbreaking reports done by Revolver. Tucker Carlson aired a bunch of those reports pertaining to FBI informants and FBI involvement. We know the leader of the Proud Boys, Enrique Tarrio, is an admitted FBI informant. Now, to what degree, I don't know. But it is extremely suspicious when, hey, the people who've all been rolled up by the FBI are the same ones running this whole op, which didn't go in the favor of the American people. It didn't go in the favor of President Trump. That's for sure. Okay? So it is pretty interesting how they just left the gates right open so that their agitators and provocateurs could just waltz right in, right? And then, of course, their officer, their Capitol Police officer, their officer, Michael Byrd, just shoots Ashley Babbitt dead. Just shoots her dead. Doesn't give her any warning. Doesn't say, hey, stop. I'll shoot. Get down. Stop. Nothing. No. He's like hiding off to the side and he just, boom, shoots her dead. She didn't even see him. I don't even think she made eye contact with the guy. And somehow that's not murder. The same Democrats that march in the streets for George Floyd, march in the streets for these other people that end up, actually getting into fights or something with police officers or charging at them with knives or guns, and the police shoot them, and then they'll riot over that. But a protester that didn't even see the guy, didn't even see the police officer, off to the side hiding, can shoot her dead, and he gets an award at Biden's inauguration ceremony. How disgusting is that? Absolutely disgusting. And then, of course, the Democrats have the nerve and the audacity to use the tragedy of her life that was taken violently and needlessly. They use her death as justification to run a hit piece, a smear campaign against President Trump and all Trump supporters. It's disgusting. And we need to call it all out. We need to call out what the Democrats have done. And who needs to be held responsible? I would say Nancy Pelosi and Mitch McConnell, because they were the two people who were in charge of instructing their sergeant of arms, their Capitol Police, to ensure the peace, ensure the safety of the Capitol building and to ensure that no agitators or whatever could break into the Capitol like what happened on January 6th. The blame needs to be on them, okay? It was their job. Their job. And we know that the Capitol Police chief resigned over the whole thing. Both the sergeant of arms resigned for the House and for the Senate. Both the sergeant of arms resigned. And I think it's because they were upset. I think it was out of disgust, really and truly. So this is the level of insanity we're dealing with. All right. So I think that the reason why the Democrats are actually weaker than they seem is because the reason they're having to do January 6th, these hearings, these January 6th clown show hearings, is because they're in a mad panic that the Biden administration has been having so many failures, economy's failing, gas prices high, food shortages, all that craziness. And they know where their vulnerabilities lie. Their vulnerabilities lie in our ability to fight back. Let's say they do horribly because of how horrible Joe Biden is doing as a president right now, and the Democrats do horribly in the midterms. They risk losing the Senate and the House. If they lose the Senate and the House to the Republicans, what kind of revenge do you think the Republicans are going to enact on the Democrats for what the Democrats have been doing, weaponizing their powers, their congressional powers, to go after their Republican political opponents? We know already that Peter Navarro and other Republicans have come out and said, you're using this fire against us. Well, we'll fight fire with fire. You want to go these routes? We'll go that route back at you. And, after the midterms happen, you're going to see what's going to happen. So they're terrified right now. They're in a position of weakness. So do we continue to cower and hide back, or do we press forward? And do we press forward harder on these issues, harder than ever before? We need to press hard on Nancy Pelosi. We need to be calling her out. We need to be saying, Nancy Pelosi, you need to be held for treason. You need to be investigated. Why didn't you instruct your sergeant of arms and the Capitol Police to have security presence and to have the National Guard there? Trump had even suggested and offered, hey, have 10,000 National Guard troops there. I really think that there should be a lot of security presence there. Why? Most likely because they were fearful of Antifa and all these other radicals that would try to come and co-opt their peaceful protest. So he asked Christopher Miller, hey, why not have 10,000 National Guard there? It'd be a good idea to have security. Why did they not have it? Well, Christopher Miller then chimes back to Trump. I have to get a request. I can't just do it. It's the way the checks and balance works. He has to have a request from the Capitol Police. Capitol Police chief is like, oh yeah, sure. Because of course they contact the Capitol Police chief and they're asking like, hey, are you going to give us a request? Because we'd like to, offer this for you. And the Capitol Police chief is like, yeah, we really want this. We want the help for the National Guard, but I have to get the go-ahead. We have to have the order from the Sergeant at Arms. Well, all the Sergeant at Arms does is literally takes the orders from Nancy Pelosi, okay, the House Majority Leader, and also from the Senate Majority Leader, Mitch McConnell. So the Sergeant of Arms is literally the person who they give the orders to, and then he goes and does it and enacts it, right? So there was a chain of command, all right? So Nancy Pelosi has been refusing to hand over her communications with her Sergeant of Arms. You guys want to put on a giant January 6th committee hearing and try to point finger at Trump, point finger at all the people around him, say you're responsible for what happened on January 6th? And Nancy Pelosi won't even hand over her communications with her Sergeant of Arms. Isn't that interesting? So that's something we need to press forward on. Nancy Pelosi should hand over her communications with her Sergeant of Arms. What were they talking about? Why didn't they want to have the National Guard there? Exactly. These are the issues we need to press hard on because it's their weak point. It's where they're afraid. okay? And they're attacking the Republicans hard right now, and they're attacking Trump. They're attacking everyone around Trump because they're terrified of Trump, and they're terrified of the people around him. They're terrified of you. That's why they demonize you, conservatives, patriots, some of you Trump supporters, right? So they're demonizing you because they're afraid of you. What are they afraid of? They're afraid that you'll actually take action and that they'll actually be charged for their criminal activities, their criminal behaviors. Okay? So we need to continue to press forward on these issues. Make sure you guys share the stream, share the videos so that the information I'm sharing with you can get out there. And also just share these ideas with each other. That's key as well. All right, guys. Well, I hope you guys enjoyed the Millennial Millie show today. You remember to go to millennialmillie.com to check out my daily, not my daily show, but it's Monday, Wednesday, and Friday at 5 p.m. Eastern Time. I do a live show, usually about an hour and 15 or hour and 20 or 30 minutes. On my website, you can find some of my other reports that I don't put up on YouTube or Facebook or these other platforms, but they're reports that actually go up and air on Lindell TV. So those are more like edited reports with lots of B-roll clips and things like that. So you might like them. You might want to watch them. They're in here. That's where you can find them in this little scroll bar. But yeah, please support me. Support real journalism, guys. I have some Drain the Swamp t-shirts right here with me stabbing the swamp creature. It says drain the swamp because really and truly that's what we really need to be focusing on right now. We need to drain the swamp, especially coming for the midterms. We need to be draining the swamp. So this is a great way to advertise to your friends, your family, your community when you're walking around. We need to drain the swamp. It could spark up a conversation. These are high quality t-shirts. They are printed very well, very soft fabric, quality t-shirts that, you know, when you purchase these t-shirts, it helps me continue to do my journalism, guys. And not only that, you're getting a quality product here that is really a classic. It's got the Capitol building here with the swamp trying to take over the Capitol, and you've got Millennial Millie, me on there, stabbing the octopus, the swamp creature, with my sword of truth, my microphone. So you can get those shirts on millennialmillie.com. Check it out. This is what the graphic looks like. And it really does look that good on the shirt. I mean, it really does. It's crazy. High quality printed. Right there. Look at that. And it's all about the Capitol, isn't it? millennialmillie.com. Drain the swamp. Really cool shirts. We have men's sizes and women's sizes. So get them. They're perfect summer tees. They'd make great gifts for friends and family for birthdays and for other events. So get them. Your purchases help support real journalism. We also have Drain the Swamp posters. So get yourself a Drain the Swamp poster too. I sign and autograph them, and if you leave a note in there of what you want me to, if you want me to make it out to someone in particular, I can do that. So put that all in there when you purchase your poster, your Drain the Swamp poster, guys. We also have Shadowgate t-shirts as well. So if you want your Shadowgate t-shirt, we've got those as well. They're on sale right now. All right, guys. Thank you for joining me on this broadcast today. I hope you enjoyed it. I know I enjoy having these broadcasts with you guys. And I will be continuing to do them. So long as I continue to have your support. I am supported by you. I'm not supported by any news outlet or media outlet. And I like it to be that way. So if I can continue to get support from you, I can continue to do this journalism and spread the word, spread truth out there for everyone. Now, if you guys haven't yet heard about QUX, you need to get on QUX, okay? QUX is building out its own portal universe where people can go on there, have communication, where they are free from censorship, free from being told what they can and can't do or say. They can buy and sell on there, trade on there. encrypted communications, encrypted transactions. It is the new internet. It is the new future. We are building out our own new net, and everyone who gets a box is part of this new net. All the boxes communicate, and it's like a big mesh net, a big network, and it's really exciting what we're doing. I mean, we've literally, like, what QUX is doing is beyond exciting. Okay, it is next level, it is disruptive, it is a way to not be spied on. Don't let big tech collect your data and sell it and just use you to continue their predictive algorithms and models where they essentially can steal elections, can build social credit score systems and all these things to further control and enslave us all. So get on QUX, guys. Get your own QUX TV box. You can use promo code Millie to get a discount, MILLIE. So get your QUX TV box, guys. No, there are not any subscriptions. So what's cool is you don't have to have subscriptions to watch TV on there and watch content. Tons of content for free. You just one-time purchase of $149.99, and then you, of course, can use promo code Millie to get $15 off. That's one hell of a deal right there. You buy a Roku or any of those other things, they have like tons of apps and whatnot on there, but most of the apps, it's just stuff you have to pay subscriptions for. And those subscriptions add up. People are paying tons of money in subscriptions for these various like Netflix, Hulu, right? That all adds up over time. Cool thing about QUX is QUX has its own app store, just like an Apple TV box would or Apple device would. They have their own app store, but they also have what's called the Portal Universe. And what's cool about the Portal Universe is anyone, it's like anyone could be on Roku, essentially. Currently, right now, if you wanted to create your own channel or your own app on Roku, it could cost you upwards of $50,000. You'd have to hire your own app developer to build an app for you. You'd have to go through all the screening and processing with Roku, and maybe they'll approve you, maybe they won't. Maybe they'll ban you at any time. They've done that before. They've banned people on there before. So the cool thing about these QUX boxes is if you're an app developer, you can actually create your own apps and have your app be on the QUX store or the QUX app store, or you can use the Portal Universe and use the Portal generator online, where literally just with your computer, you can build out your entire portal on there, where you can have your videos, music, posts, like products that you sell, all kinds of things on there. It's unbelievable. And you could literally even be pushing and promoting your own business on there. You could be running ads on there as a business, selling products on there as a business, cross-promoting with other platform creators and other businesses, and it's just a really unique, handy tool. And one of the best things about it is the private transactions and the tokenization system that QUX has. QUX is not using a Bitcoin type of currency. I know right now Bitcoin, cryptocurrencies are all crashing. They're doing bad right now. QUX is essentially where they have the QX token system where you convert USD directly into QUX tokens, and the exchange is just directly one-to-one, and you literally use the tokens to engage in private encrypted transactions. And then at the end of the day, say you earn a bunch of money on there, you can cash your tokens back out into USD and withdraw your money. Or you could take that money and order some food online for delivery, and next thing you know, it's showing up at your door. That is QUX. That is some of the cool new tools that you're going to see on this device. So get it while it's hot, guys. You are the future. You guys are building this out. The power is in your hands, whether or not you guys want this to be big or whether you don't. Do you guys want to take out big tech? Do you want to give them a run for their money? You want to take them out? You want to create something new and better that has none of the constraints and restraints that they have put on all of our electronics? They've only given us electronics and tools that they think that they need to control us. Imagine what happens when we have all the tools in our hand that we need and we want in order to make our lives better, ensure our freedom, and to have our own peace of mind, our privacy. We have a right to privacy. Our Constitution says so. Problem is, most of these tech companies don't care about our Constitution. They don't care about our privacy either. They essentially have us all waive it when we use their devices. QUX values privacy, okay? They value privacy, security, all of that. You're not going to find that anywhere else. You're not going to find that with any other electronics company. So get behind QUX. Vote with your wallet, okay? You have to vote with your wallet as to what you support. That's how these big corporations, these big companies are so dominant. Why do you think Amazon is so dominant? Because you use it, okay? You vote with your wallet. You use it. That's why Amazon has so much power. What do they do with that power, though? They abuse it. They abuse people. They abuse the small businesses that helped them get there. That's not who you should be voting for, who you should be supporting. You should be supporting patriots, patriot-owned technology, okay? Because that's who, at the end of the day, is going to support you and is going to make sure you have the tools that you need to be successful in society. So if we don't get behind this and have tools, what's going to happen when they take away our access to their tools because they just don't like us? And believe me, that's how deranged the left is these days. It's unbelievable, okay, how deranged the left has become. And the Silicon Valley elites are extremely progressive, extremely left-wing. We can't have all the power be in their hands. It's not going to bode well for patriots. It's not going to bode well for us everyday Americans that value our rights if we just have all those crazy Silicon Valley elitists with all this power. We're just giving them our data, giving them everything over on a silver platter. Enough's enough. Today's the day you draw the line and you say, I'm done supporting that. I'm going to support something new. I'm going to help be part of building out the new net, the new portal universe. We don't just need you to get a box. We need you to get on there, put your business on there, make content on there, build out the portal universe. You have an entire new electronic device, a new universe to create. What are you doing? Get on it. All right, guys. I hope you enjoyed this show. I will be back Friday. So you can watch me on Friday at 5 p.m. Eastern Time. It's time to fight back.